Hey, good morning, guys. I figure I start a minute early, make sure everything's running smoothly. My name's Robin. Just before, obviously, I don't do this every day, but want to make sure that you guys can hear me. So if somebody can just type in, if anybody's tuned in already, can just type in yes into the little comment section. That'd be awesome. Just to double check. We got a few questions. Oh, thanks you. Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate that. All right. So, again, I did the yesterday's office hours. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that. Again, my name is Robin. I'm the director of instruction for Top Speed Golf. So I handle all of the in-person lessons here. I do all the distance clinics, and I do also online lessons with a lot of students. So, and by the way, I did just open up some spots for my online unlimited review spots. So I believe there's a button right above me here. If you want to sign up, we'll love to help you out there. Or if you guys want to come in here, I'm getting ready after this to do some lessons for the day. But if you guys want to come into Orlando and work with me personally, just go and shoot me a note, robin@topspeedgolf.com. And also, we're going to get ready to launch some more distance clinic dates. Our September one filled up, which is awesome. Then we have October. We have 2 in October, November, and December for the rest of the year. So we're really excited. It feels great here in Orlando that time of the year as well. So as you guys may know, I am coined the distance or Mr. Distance on the site. So my niche is going to be distance, primarily focused on speed. What we can do in our golf swing to generate more speed in the golf swing. So things like how we could take the power turn and make that longer. Oop. Just want to make sure, did I pause out for a second? It looks like mine paused out. Guys, can you, I think I'm good there. All right, good. So yeah, I just wanted, that's what I do in a distance clinic. That's what I do with lessons. And, but I also work with the Top Speed Golf system during our lessons. So it's really exciting. Okay. So hopefully everything's working okay now. Sorry about that for a second. All right. Well, why don't we just dive into it? Take a look at some of the questions. Some of them here were submitted before we started. So I wanted to get into that. Am I good now, by the way? Is that yes to I'm good now as far as I'm not paused anymore, by the way? They're Matthew and Gino. Before I kind of go on and I'm paused and everything. All right, cool. Thank you, Mark. Okay, so let me see here. There's a few that started off like Chris. Good morning, Robin. I'm having trouble maintaining understanding leaning spine angle throughout the backswing. Can you please talk about that? So as you know, on our site, we have one of our main parts of the Top Speed Golf system is the stable fluid spine. Just let me talk really quick about the most common things about spine angle. For the most part, well, really the most common thing is our spine tilt address here. Let me just go and stand up for you guys. The most common thing is that our spine tilt has a tendency to go the opposite way. So going this way in the downswing. So that is obviously the main issue there, as we call maybe reverse pivot. So part of it there is that in order for us to generate more spine tilt or to maintain our spine tilt in the backswing, there's a kind of a sequence of events that need to happen. One is going to be a weight shift, making sure that we're shifting our weight onto our right side. Now that's a key factor there. A lot of people stay with their feet too stable or restrict their weight distribution onto their trail side. And it's about 80%, by the way, by the time we get to our backswing. And that's kind of one. And so that's already, and I see that very common. It's already going to help you maintain that spine tilt in the backswing. Another key factor is our hip rotation. A lot of people restrict hip rotation. So what that does is that also locks you up. So if the hips stay too stable in this direction, you can see if they go up and down, our spine is going to want to do the opposite. So let's say if this is our trail hip here, and in our backswing, if it doesn't rotate, but just goes lateral up, you can see what it can do to our spine tilt if the target is this direction. So then that makes it difficult for us to maintain that angle. So then with that weight distribution, allowing the right hip to open up and back. So up and opening in the backswing, that also helps you maintain that spine angle. So those are the two biggest things, and I would say honestly, and then from there, it's going to be a matter how much. And again, number one thing I see with rotation in the shoulders is that we turn to level instead of having this lead side bend in the backswing to help you out with that turn and also that spine angle. Excuse me. So those are the main things that I see with students that I work with when it comes to maintaining spine tilt there into the backswing. So those are the things I would check for you there, Chris, if that's going to be what's happening in your swing, if you're struggling with that spine tilt. So always just don't, I would say, is no restriction in the hips and no restriction in your weight distribution. Just get nice and athletic with your golf swing, and that should help you out immensely. Okay? Let's go take a look here now. What was after Chris? David F. Hi, Robin. I tend to extend my hips toward the top of my backswing and even more in my downswing. What drills and swing feelings, checkpoints do you recommend? Well, drills wise, I would definitely, the two things I would work a lot on is going to be the compression line series stuff and the straight line release series, because both talk a lot about rotation, how we can get our hips open there at impact and then get to our hips open into the release point. And that's kind of the thing there. When you hear extension or in the backswing, so what that means is you've always heard the term, you want to keep your hips on the wall, and that's good because that's helping you maintain your posture. But we want to think of our hips as individual. We don't want to necessarily think of both hips staying on that wall, because what that will do is actually restrict your rotation. And that's actually what's happening when we have early extension, so hips coming off that wall. So it sounds like, again, for you there, David, is that hips are coming off the wall in the backswing, which is, again, very common. And then in the downswing, hips are now coming off the wall. And usually that results into blocks or early release in the hands. So that can also mean snap hooks, relying on the timing of your hands. So you want to think of your hips as individual. So when you're going on the way back, thinking that I'm right-handed, so my right hip or your trail hip is going back, and then your left hip is actually, or left glute or your lead hip is coming off of that wall in your backswing. So that ensures that you're staying into your posture in your backswing. And then on the way down, that transfers to then now right hip is coming off, or I should say trail hip is coming off of that wall, to now lead hip is opening up and hitting that wall on the way down. So think of those things. And a good drill that you can do is, I'm going to try to do it here really quick. Hopefully you guys can see me, is that when you can do this at home, is that go ahead and stand up on a wall here and get into your golf posture, place your hands across your chest, and you want to where you can just barely feel the wall against your glutes. And when you're turning back, you should feel right or trail hip hit that wall on the way back with this good turn here. And as you're transferring the way down, so you should, by the way, you should feel lead hip off or lead glute off that wall. You shouldn't try to maintain that. You can see how it restricts my rotation here. So trail hip on the wall to then transferring to, then I really want you to feel yourself push on the wall now. Instead of just like feeling it there, I want you to push on that wall with that lead hip. You can see that motion there, and my trail hip is coming off of the wall there. So that's allowing me to really feel my hips feel more individual, and now I can really get open, and I can also stay into my posture there, David. Hope that answers your question there. That was actually a really good one. Okay, so David B asks, could you talk about position action of the right shoulder during the downswing? Is it the same if you're trying to draw or cut? Good question there, David. So to put it plain and simple, let's go first on alignment. So for a draw, let's say for a right-handed player, we are going to aim slightly more right of our target, depending how much of a draw that you want to. If you want to really draw or hook the ball, the more right you'll aim. So what that means is the more, just pretty much your shoulders be aiming more right, and coming down to impact, your shoulders will still be opening, but obviously you're swinging more in a plane to where we'll have more of a roll release into our straight line release point here. Now we're fading it. we're going to aim a little bit more left. And potentially, this is the only potential where I'd say that your shoulders may open up more. Doesn't have to. You can still hit a fade without your shoulders open up too much into the downswing. Remember, tour average is 45 degrees open with the hips at impact and about 10 to 12 degrees open with the hips, with the shoulders there at impact. So it is going to be roughly the same, but you do see on tour, excuse me, you do see on tour that guys who fade the ball, like let's say Dustin Johnson, he's going to be way more open with his hips and a little bit more open with his shoulders than that average number there. And that's allowing them to get that body out of the way so that you can have more what we call that square release to hold off so you can hit a little bit of that fade there. So as far as the action in the right shoulder, it's not really changing. Like we're not changing anything as far as if we're having more side bend, or if that's coming in lower with a draw, or if it's coming in higher with the fade. The only thing I'd say it really does change is that if you're really trying to hit it high, maybe that you're having more of a rotation to where this lead side is going more up and your chest is trying to go more up if you're really, really trying to put it high into the air. And when you're lower, maybe you're trying to stay more kind of covering the ball better with your chest. And that's the only time where I really say that it's changing. But for the most part, shoulder rotation wise, when we go into our backswing, our trail shoulder should be, for you, your right shoulder and mine is going to go on a higher plane than my left one here. And that's going to transfer to then left shoulder is rotating up and going higher. And then my right shoulder is obviously creating, what we call side bend there. All right, so I hope that answered your question there, David, as well. So thanks. Good one there as well. These are good questions. See why Q has a lot of fun with this. Let me go ahead and go to, I think it was Dennis. Yeah, Dennis goes, can you review how the hands and wrists and forearms work from impact to finish? All right, so that's really good. Excuse me. So you want wrist, arms, hands. Okay. So let's just focus right now at impact. And let's focus on, let's say, a dead square shot. Let me go ahead and move my camera here. So on a dead square shot, if we think of just forearms alone, so we got pronation, supination going on here, and our wrists are obviously doing the same thing. Now we have flexion, extension, and that's contributing to our hands as well. So impact-wise, ideally impact, we want to have, let's go from wrist, we want to have this angle of extension. Let me go ahead and tip this down a little bit. So we want to have this angle of flexion into our left wrist or bowed left wrist here, right? So then in the same motion, our forearm now is beginning, before impact is beginning to now, oh gosh, I may get this wrong, pronate. So it's going to turn more, if I'm hitting the ball this way, turning outwards. So you can see like the inside part of my arm here is going to be turning towards the target line, allowing me to create this flexion here in my lead wrist. Opposite way around with my trail arm. So my right arm, now that let's say the outside part of my forearm here is now kind of turning in towards the target. And you hear us say a lot, this is before impact now, you hear us say more petting the turf with the palm of the right or your trail hand. And what that does is that creates now extension here into the right hand. Now this is happening prior to impact. So by the time you get to impact, lead wrist or back of the left hand is going towards the target, as palm of the right hand is also facing towards the target. Now that's impact position. Let's say that's for dead square. So if I want to draw the ball, my face is going to be a little bit shut there at address. You don't want to have it too much. You got to think of tour players. If we look at our launch monitors here, they're only going to be a few degrees at the most, like 3 degrees at the very most if they're trying to draw the golf ball face closed. So you don't want to necessarily have like this right arm rolled over the left at impact. That's going to lead to a complete snap hook. So it's a matter of a little bit. So let's think of just dead square. And if you have a few degrees, it's going to be a little bit more pronation, supination into your arms. Now, as you continue on, again, we have what we call 2 different types of releases. You have more of a roll release. Again, that's going to be primarily for guys who draw the golf ball. Think of guys who do that very well, as like Adam Scott, Rory McIlroy. You're going to see their forearms roll more, and then their wrists are going to roll more. Then you'll see guys like Bryson DeChambeau who have more of that square release where they're kind of maintaining this angle more as far as like back of the left hand or lead hand going towards the target longer. So you have kind of two options there. Most common you'll see is going to be more of a roll release. So now impact to then there our lead wrist now. So it's gone from bowed, still bowed, to now creating more of this. Again, I apologize if I'm getting it wrong right now. Pronation, supination is not clicking for me, but let's say just pronation here. So that right now my forearm, or just say, let's think of your elbow here. Now my elbow is going from at the target at impact to then turning down towards the ground on the way down, and same thing in my right forearm. If we go to impact here, my left elbow is facing towards the ground and not turning to where it's now facing. It won't necessarily face towards the sky, but you're getting into that action there, into your release point, to that straight line release point. In the straight line release point for a roll release, I always love to have the feeling as if I'm getting here and I'm trying to shake hands with somebody out here in front of me in that straight line release point. That seems to get that good angle. So you're not rolling the arms over too much, and nor you're keeping the face too open. Shaking hands gives you that pretty good release point, as much as so you're not doing it too much or not enough. And a square release, again, like I said, you're pretty much maintaining that angle of impact with flexion, extension in the hands and forearms, and then maintain that to that, we call that straight line release, going towards the target. All right, so I hope that answers your question there, Dennis, as far as what the arms and hands are doing there. Okay. James D, can you discuss some drills to stop coming over the top into the downswing? First, before we get into that, like I would definitely recommend is the ball striking masterclass. That's probably going to be the number one thing that's going to give you the best insight of, okay, what is going on in your swing. So in that ball striking masterclass, Clay goes over, try to hit really big draws. So what that does is it gets you swinging in a more in to out path on an over, or actually hooking the golf ball on a very over exaggerated motion. So coming on an in to out plane, and what I was just talking about, really rolling the hands on through to really get the ball hooking. So then what we're doing there is, even if you go the opposite way around, so fading, and typically what we see in the over the top path is that now if you do both of those on an extreme level, it really makes it easy to find a median. So then hypothetically there, James, if you do come over the top, then you can know, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to add in more of what I like to say a draw or hook, and then more than likely it'll kind of straighten you out. So you have that awareness. On the other side of that there, James, one of the things that really does help you out a lot is going to be diving into like the move section. So that's shallowing the club on the way down. So allowing that club angle to square up, and then this motion here into the downswing. So the club's in essence fall behind you in the move section. And then from there, diving into lag. Those two help you out a lot when it comes to more of an over the top path. The other thing I'd also double check too, a good drill that you can do with that is we call the step drill, because the number one thing that we see with an over the top path is going to be lack of or a sequencing error. So that means that upper body is potentially firing first before the lower body. So we want to make sure that that lower body is driving first into the downswing, and then our upper body is following second. So then, like I said there, the step drill. So if you go into the site here and go into that search bar and just put in step drill, it should be one of the first ones that pops up there. And then that talks about weight distribution first into our lead side, getting the hits open, and then again using that momentum for the club to drop in the slot on the way down, helping for you that path of swinging. Again, for you, it's going to feel more into out instead of over the top. But obviously, over exaggeration stuff is going to be massive for you. That'd be really, really big. Hope that helped you out there, James. Okay. Dennis B. Excuse me. I'm not able to be consistent with my short chip shot. How do you move the club? Is it with the shoulders, torso, hip? I got a lot of chunk and thin shots. Oh, that's a great one there, because I'm glad you told me like what's going on with your chipping, because thin And by the way, take a look. Clay has an awesome short game series there on the site, our wedge series that we have in our vault section. So if you go under tab instruction, go under vaults, and then you'll see the wedge series there. So take a look at that for sure. So I'll tell you this here, Dennis, a chunk and a thin is actually the same thing, just a difference on timing for you. So at least when you know that happens, both of them, it's going to be the same thing. So normally what happens, and I'm glad you also mentioned to me, you asked me about rotation of the body, is that typically when we see that, there's no rotation going on the hips or no rotation going on the shoulders with both chunk and thin. So what's happening, the great thing is just like into the full swing, if our body is too square there at impact, what happens there is, like, let's say the body just completely stopped here. Well, then the arms and the hands are just going to keep going. And what that typically causes is going to be a flip, both in full swing and in chipping and pitching. So what that means is that we still need to make sure that we're rotating through with our hips and our shoulders, so we can still generate shaft line there a little bit with our chip shot. So you're not getting too handsy or flippy with it. And that's why when you flip it, when you chunk it, you're still flipping at it, but it's just happening prior to the golf ball. And when you thin it, it's happening a little bit too late. So both of this be the same thing. And the reason why I say it's going to be more, it's probably going to be rotation, because it's pretty much the number one thing I see from all students who come in and see me who struggle with chipping is going to be because of lack of rotation in hips and shoulders. So a great drill that I would suggest that you can do is going to be the towel drill. I would recommend just placing a towel underneath both armpits here and doing that. You can do that with pretty much 100 yards and in. With the towel drill, I wouldn't recommend doing a full swing because we still need separation here in our armpits and our backswing and follow through. So it's going to be like maybe at the most a 3/4 swing, but it's amazing for chipping because with the towel drill, it forces you to rotate the shoulders. You do need to actually rotate the hips a little bit, but it forces you to rotate and hit the shot more with your body instead of trying to hit it with your hands. And that's what's creating a lot of inconsistency. Even if you hit it good, it creates an inconsistency as far as distance control. So those guys who are a little bit more onto the skilled side, who want to dial in the distances with their wedges, it's really good to do that towel drill because it really forces you to take a lot of the hands out of the equation because that's just so common to be flippy with it at impact. And that's it. And the one thing I'll say too is always make sure you're accelerating through. Another big thing with a little bit of a thin and chunk is going to be deceleration. So from there, I've given you the technique part, but you also need to make sure that you're going out there and practicing because it does take time to understand how hard you need to hit shots. Of course, you can always go the Pels way of saying, okay, from this point in my backswing to this point in my downswing, it's going to go 20 yards or so. But for the most part, you're not going to see many tour players who are going the same distances in backswing and follow through. So sometimes they go further back and then they have a little bit less follow through depending on the shot. So I wouldn't really fully recommend doing that. At least I've given you a little bit of the technique. Now it's going out there to your practice area or your chipping area and finding your distances, working on your distances. And like I said, working on the 100 yards and in is going to be really good. So that was a really good question there, Dennis, when it comes to chipping. But the great thing here really quick is that those who struggle with a little bit of a flip in the full swing, like you're doing the same thing there. So work on those chip shots, work on that towel drill and those little half swings, and that will leak into your full swing. All right, so we got Jeremy here. Oop, where do you go? I'm having issues getting my swing speed up despite being fairly athletic, mid-30s. I've gone through the TSG system, and I'm also in the ball striking masterclass. Awesome. Can't seem to track the code on proper sequencing for tremendous lag and straight line release. I've been told that my speed maxes out after I've already struck the golf ball. Thanks in advance. Any guidance? So that's interesting that you said that because a lot of people, actually for the most part, your speed really burns up prior to impact instead of after impact, which is very extremely rare there, Jeremy. Like what you have going on is very rare for your speed to be happening after impact. So with that being said, for you, it sounds like you are, in essence, what I would say is actually you still are early releasing the club. So since you mentioned to me lag there, Jeremy, I think what's happening is, so early release obviously means that we're releasing the club. It doesn't mean you have to flip at impact. I mean, there's even guys on tour who struggle with early release, and it usually comes from something. There's a cause and effect on things. So early release is releasing that lag, the position of lag prior or too early. So usually that happens roughly around waist high in that general area of when we're releasing the club. So you're releasing the angle of lag. So what's actually happening is you're burning your speed early. But for you there, Jeremy, it sounds like to me, because I've worked with plenty of students on speed and where it's happening, and it can be here, it can be in front of the ball. But when we early release here, then what you're doing is you're maintaining it so you don't continue to flip, if that makes sense. So you early release a little bit, and then you maintain that through the hidden area. So then now you're very kind of tense a little bit at impact, maybe left elbow slightly bent here. And then after and we get to our straight line release, now you're letting that go. And that's when you're getting that maxing out feeling. So it's like you've early release, maintained. So actually you're kind of slow at impact. And then now, since you know how to early release the club, since you know how to release the club, then you're releasing it out here. So then you're also creating like another speed zone. So you got speed zone here, slow, speed zone here into your release. When we ideally want just one, and we want that to be right down the golf ball. So you're right. So it sounds like how you're creating lag and how you're maintaining lag until how you release that lag right down the golf ball. So with that being said there, Jeremy, one thing I would definitely check is going to be rotation. Is going to be first of all, if you're sequencing in downswing, so that means lower body's driving first into the way down. That's huge. And with that, definitely check your turn. So dive into the power turn stuff. But I would check your hip rotation. And if you see yourself on video and if you're rotating open, then I would double check early extension to see if your hips are coming off. So you can rotate open, but you can still lose posture there. And then either you can rise up with early extension in your upper body, or your hips can kind of go towards the ball, right? And then you're kind of coming off that wall. So then that also causes early extension there. Early release there. So then you're early releasing here, maintaining, and then you're releasing again. And I guarantee you that's probably going to be some of the issues there, is going to be that early extension there. So what I would work on then is going to be hip, staying into your posture there. So what I would recommend as well there, Jeremy, when you're on the site, just go in the search bar and just put in posture, because I think if you type in just posture, there's a good video for that Clay does. It has like posture and crazy detail. That'd be really good for you. And then the other side of that is check. There's another one if you put in side bend. So we're creating trail side bend, rotating open. When we do that side bend, helps you create more lag on the way down, a later release, and then allows you to, boom, whip the club through the hitting area. Now, one drill that I do a lot with people who struggle with lag in the golf swing it's a speed drill primarily, but it focuses on over exaggerating lag. Is that you're going to do 3 practice swings, and on the 4th ball you're going to hit it. So in the 3 practice swings, what I want you to do is you're going to over and max out the angle of lag that you can create, and then you're going to whip the club through the hitting area. And what I want you to do is pay attention to the swoosh of it. So the swoosh of the club should be happening roughly in the area of the golf ball. Our max speed zone should be a foot behind the ball and a foot after. So when you're releasing that lag, think of like a hammer, hammering a nail into the golf ball. That's that releasing this lever in your wrist here of lag. So when you're releasing that swoosh should be down the golf ball. And get that and do that at a fairly slower pace until you can get it right in the right area. You don't want it way before the ball. You don't want it way after the golf ball. And when you can do that, then go to the drill. Okay, so boom, swoosh is number 1. The second one, you should increase, still doing the same thing, lag to boom, releasing it, hearing the swoosh down the golf ball. But now that swoosh should be faster than the first one. The third one should be even faster in the sound of how you're hearing it. And the fourth one, when you go to hit a golf ball, should be your fastest. So then that's going to increase your speed dramatically. And I found that like just yesterday alone in one of my lessons yesterday, he was averaging on a normal swing speed about 88, max speed about 94. Then he started doing this drill. So he did it in literally 5. So he did 3 practice swings, 1 ball hit. And on the 5th one, he did that series there. He went from 94, if I remember correctly, he went 94, 98, 96, and it was like 98 again. And then the 5th one that he hit, or 4th one that he hit, it was 102. It was 102 was the one he hit. So he went from about 87 on average to max swing speed of 102. And he said he's only hit before that like 94, maybe a couple times in his life, just by doing that one drill alone. Because there's lag, because he needed to work on lag there, Jeremy. So hopefully that answers your question there and helps you out with that. All right. So let's go to Jack D. Please discuss posture regarding covering the ball at address on the driver's swing, especially in conjunction with spine tilt. Okay. So I will say this here, Jack. When we're over the ball in general, there's not really a point. I mean, so we want to think of it as that. Think of your sternum of your chest here, Jack. The sternum of your chest should be pointed at minimum, or I should say over the ball. The sternum, you should, if you draw a line or take like your driver and stick it into your sternum there, should be pointing at the golf ball at minimum. If it's slightly outside, great. We don't want to obviously too much in front of you, so pointing at like the air, and we don't want to be too much inside the golf ball. Now we're way too over the ball. So at minimum, we want it to be at the golf ball, because the reason why I say that at impact, we want our chest at impact to be opening, but we don't want it to be, again, popping up and pointing out here in front of you, nor way too down here, which that's a little bit more rare. So then at impact, our chest should be pointing in line with the golf ball. If I had a golf ball here, I don't think I have a golf ball. Well, let's say if my mouse here is the golf ball and my target line. So I want the line of my sternum at impact to be pointing at the golf ball, but in line with the golf ball, but about 3 to 4 feet in front of the ball. So that's ensuring that I'm not restricting my rotation, and ensures I'm not also popping up out of my posture. So at address wise with the driver, what that means is when it comes to spine tilt, what we're then doing is they're still maintaining that line in a way. So our if you think of an arc of that same line of the ball. So if there's a line of an arc, think of a big circle top of the golf swing. We actually need a little bit now extension. So we're starting here and then extension. So that doesn't mean though extension meaning as far as our right side opening on up in our right hip, because that's allowing us to get to a big turn. So now my chest should be opening up just like into the follow through there, Jack. When we go into our release point, now our chest should be pointing nice and up towards the sky. So in our backswing, that doesn't mean that I'm popping up out of my posture and going this way. That means I'm straightening up and losing the angle of my hips against that wall in a way. That just means I'm allowing my chest to open up all the way to the very top of my golf swing. So that's allowing me to maintain also my spine tilt. So many times people who struggle, let's say like with reverse pivot at the very top of their golf swing, they're trying to keep their posture too much and keep their chest down. So then either also you see this a lot. It's not just reverse pivot there, Jack. You see the head dip down a lot at the very top of the golf swing. So we want to make sure that we're still extending. So it's like you hear the term like pulling back on a lawnmower here. So that our trail shoulder is going up and back. So my chest is now going from here at address to then extending up for a big turn. Now my lead shoulder is lower at the very top. And then the downswing, I'm now coming down to impact, boom, back to almost we're opening up here, impact wise, I'm in line with the golf ball, but opening up, and then now I'm extending back to my follow through. So I hope that answers your question there, Jack, as far as like chest posture to then spine tilt. And that's allowing you, when you get this extension here when the chest, that allows you to maintain that spine tilt there at the very top of the golf swing there, Jack. All right, so that's a good question as well. A lot of good questions. Gino, I saw that you're losing me. Are we good now, by the way? Sorry about that. Okay. I'm going to assume yes. All right, let me just go ahead and oh, thanks, John. I got the pronation and supination right. Golly, I couldn't figure that. I couldn't remember that all right there. Okay, so just waiting for maybe a response from somebody saying that you guys can hear me or see me. Okay, thanks, Gino. Sorry, obviously I don't do this every single day, so I may have hit something there. Edwin asks, in regarding to the bow, and is my observation correct that Dustin Johnson starts executing the bow very early in the backswing? Yes, I will answer that right now. It would appear that he has executed the bow before the commence of the downswing. Yes, again, correct. And the reason I'm asking is this would it seem to work also better for me to start the bow midway in the backswing, allows me to simplify being able to shallow. So with that being said, I would say this: Dustin Johnson has been doing that his whole entire life. So so that's something that's kind of ingrained to him. And I was actually listening to an interview of tour players who were, this is like maybe a couple years ago, who were trying to do that, and that does require one to do it as much as Dustin Johnson. It does require a bit of mobility and flexibility, but that's like a whole bunch. Another factor is that he's able to do it, so he created that in a way that where it doesn't really mess with his golf swing too much. So midway back, I wouldn't really recommend that Edwin on the midway back position, because number one tendency when you're doing that, that club gets really back there behind you. And it's just, like I said, a move that he's been doing his whole entire life. Now, when we go to the very top of the golf swing there, Edwin, well, you're going to see a lot of guys like Victor Hovland, Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson at the very top of the golf swing. They're going to have that lead wrist fairly bowed there at the top. So I had a question yesterday asking pretty much the same exact thing, is that when we go to the very top of the golf swing, is it okay if that lead wrist is slightly bowed? And as of now, because there's a lot of research on that now, because you're seeing a lot of tour players do that, as we go to the very top of the golf swing, prior to our transition on the way down, so remember, lower body starts first. As we complete the very top of the golf swing, tour players are actually bowing or shallowing the club about like a 4 degrees or 4% there of shallowing. So what I'm getting at is, if at the very top you have that lead wrist slightly bowed, or you're feeling that slightly at the very top to help you now transition with momentum to shallowing the way down, I think that's definitely okay. On our site, we talk about it as happening on the way down, because we want to use that momentum. So think of it as that transition of your lower body starting. That momentum is taking that lead wrist to bow. So on your same point there, Edwin, I wouldn't recommend going midway because there's, for the most part, not anybody does that other than really Dustin Johnson. But several guys do it at the very top of their swing. But I'd be careful of doing that too much, because again, you want to shallow club more as you start your downswing. So if you do it too much, it's going to be hard for you to shallow, and then you're going to want to stabilize it back out. So then you're going to go now to cupped on the way down. So here to then shallow at the very top of the swing, to then shallow the club more or bowing it more on the way down there, Edwin. Good question. Again, Maurice, excuse me, asks, given that during the downswing, legs and the hips are rotating, should I focus to accelerate the lead hand, so left, and elbow downwards, as well as a trail elbow? Does this combination of vertical downward speed of hands and horizontal speed provided of leg and hip bring the club to the ball at max speed? So really good there question, Mauricio. So I'm glad you're thinking of it that way, because I hear a lot of players who try to make sure that the arms are passive in the golf swing, and they're definitely not by any means. And yes, so I want to talk about this here. I want to talk about what we call a kinematic sequencing. Kinematic sequencing is the start and stop of the transitions of the moving parts into our golf swing. So we measure that as far as lower body, torso, shoulders, arms, and then hands. So let's think of it as a transition to the downswing. As you mentioned to me there, Mauricio, yes, when we start the downswing, lower body is now driving. I just hit my knee on my desk. So our lower body is driving on the way down, and then our torso is going, and then our shoulders, arms, and then hands, all moving again, not passively. They're all moving quickly. You're putting force and energy into those moving parts, right? Now, here's a part that I think that may help you out here is now to get maximum speed down the golf ball, those moving parts and that same transition into the way down. So lower body, let's go ground up. Those are also now stopping. So what that means is that our legs don't continue to just keep going, like going around, because there's none of that like slingshot effect. So a good analogy is if you and I were running and you're slightly in front of me, right? And you slow down, but then what I do is I'm running behind you and I grab your shoulder and I pull myself, I use that shoulder and pull myself forward. What's happening there, Mauricio, is I'm slingshotting myself forward, giving me that little bit of acceleration. So think of that as if your lower body. So your lower body technically, it's rotating and then it actually begins to slow down at some point and then actually stops. And that's usually roughly around just impact area. It's going to be prior to impact where we stop our rotation. So then what happens now is my torso now pulls off of that force. It's pulling there and slingshotting. So then my torso is going to stop, right? So now my shoulders are going to pull off of that force and then open on up, and then those are going to stop, and then arms and then hands. So then allowing that boom, max speed to happen right down the golf ball. So I see a lot of players, and that's when you hear spinning out, is that when the hips kind of keep going. That's pretty impressive to do because you have to have pretty good mobility to do that. The hips kind of keep going and rotating open, and there's no real, or I should say max speed. You can still generate speed that way, but the maximum speed that you can get, there's no real of that slingshot, or you hear us say on the site, like kind of that whip effect coming through the hitting area. So that our lower body, so think of it that as you're getting to here. Let me go ahead and stand up for you here, Mauricio. I'm coming down my downswing and I'm stopping here, but you can see my upper body's pulled off that, shoulders, arms, and then boom, now club head there at impact. So hopefully that answered your question there, Mauricio. That was a really good one as far as downswing transition to generating that max speed right down the golf ball in relation to arms and the hands. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, so let's go. Where was I here? Mark T. When you speak of side bend, does that involve any spine tilt or strictly shoulder motion? That is definitely spine tilt for sure there, Mark. Into the downswing. So we have tour averages about 5 to 10 degrees at address there for spine angle away from the target. On the way down, we're now increasing that spine tilt. So we're going from here to as we rotate. So you can see this is what we call side bend, but you can see my spine tilt is tilting away from the target now more. By the time we get to impact here, we're now about 15 to 20 degrees tilted away from the target there. So it's side bend to tilting away as we're now rotating open. So the one thing there, Mark, when we're generating side bend or spine tilt is tilted away from the target more into the downswing, is that you have to make sure that you're rotating that lead side out of the way. Too many people who work on our spine angle, and you can dive onto the Stable Fluid Spine series, and they'll talk about this. I see it so many times with people who work on it in the downswing, they're working on it so much that they forget to rotate open, and that's a key factor when it comes to maintaining your spine angle. And obviously, we want to have our body out of the way by the time you get to impact. So just make sure, that's all I'm saying there, Mark, is just make sure that you're still rotating as you're working on your spine angle or side bend. All right, Tim, asks, I've been hitting my fairway woods quite well all season. All of a sudden, I've been topping them 3 to 4 times around. Any idea what may be going wrong there? All right, so I would say this. The number one thing that I see is that a lot of players try to put their fairway woods up into the air. So I'm just saying this is the number one common thing I see here, Tim. I'm not saying it's for you that you're doing this. But when we're trying to create loft in the face, or when players are trying to hit it high, they're trying to create loft in the face. So what that does is then results into a loss of either early release, loss of lag too early, or loss of shaft line there at impact. So you can either be flippy or you can just not have any shaft line at all. And then what that does, it sounds like you're early releasing a little bit too much. And then imagine here the golf ball. So if you early release the club too early, now the club head is moving on an upward angle by the time it gets to the golf ball, and that's causing you to catch it thin or top it. So my recommendation for you there, Tim, is to make sure that we're still coming in. You still want to generate shaft line and hit down on the golf ball with your woods. A tour player with a 3-wood averages a negative 2.3 angle of attack. So with a 3-wood, they're still hitting down on the golf ball. In order for us to do that, obviously you still want to rotate our lead set up and out of the way. But just be mindful, I would say there, Tim, is two things. Is, again, be mindful of rotation. But first, I would actually be mindful of weight shift. Make sure you're still shifting your weight into your lead side and on the way down. And just make sure, again, when we talk about impact position on our site, lead wrist is bowed out. We still have extension here in the right hand. And that's going towards the target and then get to your release. So it just sounds like a matter of early release for you there, Tim. And the only reason why I say that when I hear thin and top, it's because that's the most common thing I see there from students. All right, so Cameron asks, can you help eliminate a hook action by using weak trail hand grip? Yes, I mean, definitely for sure. Yeah, your grip is a big factor when it comes to dictating the face there at impact. So if you have a super strong grip, obviously the tendency is going to be the face is going to want to roll over because your hand's going to want to, in essence, now pronate a ton and it's really, really rolling over. And that's going to dictate the face. So if you weaken that out a bit, that's going to allow you or make it easier for you to keep a more squared face there at impact. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend going super weak with the grip. What I would do is first, if you're eliminating the hook, let me just go and talk about the number one cause I see for a hook. Well, there's two of them. One is going to be an over the top path. So if you know, Cameron, that you come over the top, it just shows that you actually are releasing the club properly, but your path coming over the top and going left or hooking whatever lefty or righty, let's just say stick with the righty. If you're coming over the top and your path of the club is going left and you're releasing the club, that's going to result into a hook all day long. So then that's why you see people athletically leave the face open or flip at it when they come over the top, because pretty much what you're doing there is athletically leaving the face open, and now you're slicing the ball back into the fairway. Other side of it is that I see this for guys who draw the golf ball, snap hook, comes from actually early release. Now, this is early release with actually flipping the club. This is early release to try to get like you're throwing your hands there at the golf ball to get the face square at impact. So usually when you hear snap hook or hook, it comes from also, you'll see a miss of a block as well. So now that's a timing factor. And the reason why there's a timing factor usually is going to be because of rotation. Again, either loss of posture, so popping up out of our posture, or hips coming off the wall, or lack of rotation or hips. So then what you're doing is you're using your hands a lot to square the face. And so with that timing, it's really hard to do that in the slight millisecond that you have before hitting the golf ball. So then you can do that too early, resulting in a hook. Too late, resulting in a block, or you get the timing just right and you hit it dead straight. So honestly there, Cameron, what I would check, fiddle around your grip, check yourself, if you go into the site, go into the search bar and just put in grip. There's a few videos there on explaining the grip. And if you find yourself, I can get a little bit more weak, then go ahead and do that. Nothing wrong with that. It's definitely going to help you keep that face more square at impact. But more importantly, I would say is check your swing technique. See if you're rotating open, check your path, and checking your posture as well. So that was an awesome question there, Cameron. Robert B. Excuse me. I believe I suffer from a paralysis of analysis of my swing. I hear that a lot from students who come in. So I'm curious as to what you think about just before, during, or your swing, if anything. So let me run through you like before I hit a golf ball, or what happens when, and it's not just me, it's for obviously I've gotten it from great players, and Clay and I were talking about this as well. It's like, okay, when I'm absolutely hitting the ball perfect or really well, really well, what am I thinking about? And just really quick, the most common thing you hear from tour players, and Clay and I were doing it, and we're kind of testing it ourselves. It was we're thinking about the shot itself. We are anticipating a very solid, pure shot. So we kind of know what that feels like just through just beating balls over and over and over again. But you're anticipating a solid shot, but then you're also visualizing your shot. So whether it be a nice high draw, piercing low draw, cut. So we're focusing on the shot itself, not necessarily the swing at all. So then allowing you to be more athletic. Think of it like, let's think baseball players. Baseball players do not have the time to think about, okay, hip or foot, hip, shoulders, arms, because they have a ball coming at them almost 100 miles per hour, and they have literally no time to think about all those things. So then they're reactive. So then now we're getting more feel. So what they're doing is that they're thinking of, and I've talked to baseball players before, and I'm sure there's guys on here who can relate, is that they're seeing ball. They're already anticipating where the ball is going to hit onto the bat. And then the most important thing is they're trying their very best to think of where they're going to place the ball in on the field. So whether you're trying to put it right over shortstop, whether you're trying to just go absolute yard on it, but you're not just going to swing for the fences. You're going to visualize a ball in baseball going way high, way far, and maybe into left field, center, or right field. So it's visual. And again, they don't have the time to. So in the golf swing, we have the time because the ball is stagnant. So then what we've done is just gone like completely like just thinking 1,000 different things. So I would recommend for you there, Robert, if you're going to think of, if you physically just have to have, or mentally just to have a swing thought, think of one. Let's say, all right, I'm going to get a good turn. I'm going to generate more lag on the way down. But the rest of the part, work on visually. I'm going to see. So before you hit a ball, you're looking at, this is what I do. I get my setup. This is just basic actions. I look at my target. I visualize my target. And then I'm ready to go ahead and pull the trigger. And then my result is when I'm hitting it really well, I'm already, but in my swing, visualizing the shot. I'm not looking up at the ball, but I'm visualizing my shot. And then my swing adapts to that. So if it's a draw, I'm swinging a slightly more into-out path, and my hands are releasing the club a little bit more to hit a nice big draw if I'm trying to do that. But I'm visually doing that. So my body is reacting to what my brain wants to do. Hope that makes sense. All right, so that was a good question there, because it's obviously something that I see here on a consistent basis. All right, so I got time for a few more here. Let me go ahead and let me get John here. He said, oh, sorry, Jimmy here. How can I avoid a sway into the golf swing? So sway typically can come from, I would say, two different things. Obviously, it's a lack of rotation in the hips. So not allowing yourself for literally your hips to go just back this way, and you're doing more here to here. And also the other part is weight distribution. So when you're first on your backs, your takeaway is that your weight's shifting down to the outside part of your back foot. And so then what that does is your hip socket in essence pops out of your back foot there, and on the way down, your weight shift transfers now to outside the foot, and then also you're not allowing the left hip to open up or your lead hip to open up. So good drill. What I would do is actually, when you go to hit balls next time, what I would do is place a golf ball just for the backswing. Because if you work on your loading up your right side or your trail side right hip into the backswing, it will hopefully leak into the downswing as far as getting your hips open on the way down. So what I would do is place a golf ball, and I would only do it if you're hitting off grass, off the turf, because you want the ball to kind of sit into the ground a little bit, or else the ball can slide out from under you and you can slip. Is place a golf ball outside of your back foot. So for me, it'd be my right foot. Place it on the outside part of your foot, and what that does is keeps that weight there a little bit more onto your inside part of your foot. And then now you can allow your right hip to go back, or your trail hip to go back. And if you really want to, feel as if someone's standing right there in front of you and pushing back on that right hip. And that's the big thing to kill a sway, is weight and hip rotation. On the way down, hopefully what that then does is you can now really feel, okay, my right side's loaded up, or your trail side is really loaded up, now I can really get that lead side to open up, or I can really feel that to open up on the wave down. And just for you there, Jimmy, what I would do is over exaggerate, feeling like, because your tendency is to kind of bump and slide, really feel yourself just early push that lead side out of the way, like feeling you're pushing this, like you're pushing on your pelvis here straight back, and that needs to happen early. So that's going to take a lot of reps there, Jimmy, for sure, because it's hard to trust that without a doubt. All right, let's go ahead and go. You go ahead and go here. Still have a few that came up. Andrew, let's go ahead. I tend to spin out. Oh, I kind of answered this earlier too much. I'm going to answer this quickly. When I swing, in order to squarely hit the ball square with any power, I think I might be a function of not starting my downswing correctly. It's definitely true. Can you share common causes? So, like I said there earlier, a spin out can be a weight distribution first. So next time you go out there, Andrew, and you beat balls, be mindful of where you're shifting your weight onto your downswing into your lead side. So when we're doing that, is that the first move into the downswing into our lead side should go into our left heel first. The reason why it goes into our left heel is because that begins to, now that energy transfers up to my lead knee, and that rotates that knee out of the way. So then what that then does is that pushes my left hip back. Also, with that being said, to feel your swing more into your feet, now I've talked about the left side. So when you first start, you press into the ground that lead heel, like you're squishing the bug into the ground. Immediately following, now we're getting an athletic. Right after that, you're pushing off with the ball of the right foot. So it's lead heel, push off with the ball of your trail foot, and that's beginning to push the trail hip open. So now your hips are opening on up. So for you there, Andrew, I would actually feel your swing more into your feet to avoid that spin out. That's number one. That's what I would do. The second part, as I was going on there, kinematic sequencing stuff, is like the stopping of your hip rotation. Too many times we see spin out is the hips just kind of keep going into the downswing, and there's none of that force or energy that your upper body can pull from. So think about this, is that you're literally trying to, I want you to still try to open your hips up as fast as you can there, Andrew, but I want you to think of it, they need to stop. And when they're stopping is when your belt buckle is facing the target. So think of in your downswing, you're trying to get your hips to go, but they're going to stop when your belt buckle faces the target, and you'll feel that kind of pull with the upper body, and they want to whip through the hitting area. And hopefully what that does is gives you a lot of speed, but kind of kills that spinning out. Because for you, I think your hips, and it's usually, I see that a lot with guys who are flexible in their hips. The hips are just going to keep going, and there's no real like rubber band effect or anything for the upper body to pull from there, Andrew. So that was a really good question. I believe, let's make this probably the last question here. Robert kind of goes back onto the question with Mauricio as far as a left arm hand. Do I excessively just use the large muscles of my upper body, or do I actively pull the club around my whole left arm and hand? So again, going it is that, yeah, your arms are still active in the golf swings, and your hands are as well. That's how you release lag for the hands. Arms are a product of squaring the face and also releasing that and generating shaft lean. So they're not completely passive. Now, when we do that in relation to speed, right, and that goes into the sequencing factor there, Robert, is, okay, my lower body starting first, and then torso's going next, and then shoulders are going next after that. So with that being said, it's the sequencing of what you're using in the golf swing. So tendency, the reason why I say that is obviously tendency that we see is that upper body goes first, shoulders and arms want to go first into the downswing, and now lower body is trying to catch up, and from there it's an inconsistency. So if we can get to where we're going more lower body first into the way down, shoulders are then, you're actively rotating the shoulders open, and then you're actively not pulling down, but you're actively having the hands. So this may help you out here. So your arms are actually creating width in the downswing. So we're not pulling down with the arms and hands. You can see that steepens my angle of attack. And then from there, you're going to struggle and come out of your posture. Our arms are working as far as like thinking like centrifugal force of our shoulders and everything's opening on up, they're actually working away from us in a way. So we're creating this width in the downswing with our arms. So you can see I'm pulling away from my body, so this can narrow up. This club shaft can narrow up. So as I'm rotating open, my arms are swinging on that same plane. They're not coming down. They're rotating open on this plane here, and the club is the part that's really narrowing up. So if there's anything that's technically passive, that's not part of our body, it's actually the club head itself. One, we have no control over that, but that's the part that's whipping with all of this force coming to impact, but that's coming from all of the force that we're generating from our body as a totality. So it is a sequencing factor. So again, we're moving those arms away from our body. This is still pinched into here, into the downswing, into our lead arm here. But our arms are working away from us, and that's narrowing this angle of the club shaft here for shallow and lag. And then that's what's creating that whip effect through the hitting area. All right, so I guess that's all the time I've got for the day there, guys. I have to head out to the practice tee to give some lessons. And again, just really quick, thank you very much, by the way, for having me. I know Quentin's on vacation. Hopefully I can do this again in the future. I really enjoyed it yesterday and today. You guys are going to have clay on Tuesday morning. And if there's anything that can help you out, don't hesitate to reach out. And if you do, like I said, sign up for online lessons. I have some open right now. Would love to be your coach and help you out. And I love doing those. And working here, I'm out on the range every single day giving lessons. So if you guys want to come in for an in-person lesson, just go ahead and shoot me an email, robin@topspeedgolf.com, and we can book that. Or if you want to come in for a distance clinic, I also host those. Those are incredibly, incredibly fun, and you see some serious results there. We're going to be launching the dates for the rest of the year, so keep an eye out for those. So thank you so much again, guys. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Good luck on your guys' game, and I will see you later on. All right, take care, guys.